I used to be a corporate lawyer. I worked for Microsoft. I worked for Walmart. I worked for General Electric. Part of my job was being political. I had to be sort of a lobbyist, right? There was a part of my job where I had to interact with government, schmooze with government, leverage government, and play this game. And it's in games like that you learn like companies aren't scary, and you learn how to like where the pain points and the pressure points are. And with Amazon, if you look at it, where Amazon is, we're we represent a lot of Amazon sellers. I actually have a whole nonprofit too that I created to do Amazon or e-commerce, I should say, advocacy. But a lot of it's focused around Amazon since they're sort of the big dog in the room. And it's just about knowing kind of where the Achilles heel is, right? And so with big companies like Amazon, when you're under antitrust scrutiny, that's a great opportunity for us as sellers and to basically kind of, you want to restore the balance of power between, the individual seller and Amazon. Leveraging government is a way to do that.
Welcome to the e-commerce podcast with me, your host, Matt Edmondson. Now, the e-commerce podcast is all about helping you deliver e-commerce wow. And to help us do just that, today I'm chatting with Paul Rafelson from Seller Basics about mastering regulations for e-commerce success. Oh yes, but before Paul and I dive into our conversation, let me share with you a podcast pick, a previous podcast episode that I think you're going to enjoy. Check out Should You Sell on Multiple Online Marketplaces with Jesse Ragg. And if that's not wetted your whistle enough, try How to Make the Most of Your EU Expansion Strategy with Andy Hooper. Both great guys, actually, both great conversations, both jam-packed full of top tips. And you can access our podcast picks and our entire podcast archive for free on our website, ecommercepodcast.net. Plus, if you're there, why not sign up to the newsletter if you haven't done so already? And we'll send you our links to the podcast pick from today's show straight to your inbox. I can see Paul, if you're watching it on the screen, he's pointing to the screen. Absolutely, totally. So make sure you do that.
Sign up. Sign up for the newsletter. I was giving the point.
Yeah, absolutely. You that's awesome. Now, are you struggling to grow your e-commerce business? Do you feel like you're constantly spinning your wheels, trying to figure out what to focus on next? Well, we've been there, and I know how frustrating that can be. And that's why I love being a part of e-commerce cohort. E-commerce cohort helps e-commerce businesses like yours deliver an exceptional customer experience that drives results. And to help you get started, let me tell you about a free resource called eCommerce Cycles. It's a mini course which walks you through my proven framework for building a successful online business. I'm going to show you the steps that I personally take in my own e-commerce companies, and so you can see exactly how to put these concepts into practice in your own business. And the good news, this whole mini course is totally free. You don't even need an email, so check it out. I know, right? eCommerceCycles.com. Paul, I'm going to get you back. You should come help me do these intros more often.
You shouldn't have told me that they're going to see me when you do that. I mean, now I can't help it.
Absolutely. So head over to eCommerceCycles.com to access our free training and get started today. So if you're watching the video, you have undoubtedly seen Paul point fingers, make faces, and join. And if you're on the audio version, you've heard him in the background, no doubt. Paul is a seasoned attorney, has spent over a decade and a half untangling complex corporate tax, intellectual property, and M&A matters. I mean, that just sounds like a fun life.
just drill a hole in my head, right? I mean, Paul has spent 15 years of his life being sad.
I'm sure not at all. He's a recognized authority in the e-commerce sphere. Is often featured in the news sharing insights in Amazon and e-commerce issues, and moreover, his expertise shines through when he has become the most frequently cited source during the US government's probe into Amazon business practices related to third-party merchants. The most cited source, that's a heck of an accolade. Paul, it's great to have you on the show, man. Yeah. What was that all about?
Cool. No, I was like doing my like yeah. It was like I was like a ninja. It was like a ninja stance or something.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, 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 yeah.
You
How
know.
did you become the most cited source? What went on there?
Well, I was the second most cited source, and I said, "Guys, we got it on the draft." I said, "I'm guys. I'm like I'm two away. Come on." So no, I mean, I play e-commerce. I came into this game. There's a whole backstory which we can get into if you want later. But like, I used to be a corporate lawyer. I worked for Microsoft. I worked for Walmart. I worked for General Electric. Part of my job was being political. I had to be sort
Right.
of a lobbyist, right? There was a part of my job where I had to interact with government, schmooze with government, leverage government, and play this game. And it's in games like that you learn like companies aren't scary, and you learn how to like where the pain points and the pressure points are. And with Amazon, if you look at it, where Amazon is, we represent a lot of Amazon sellers. I actually have a whole nonprofit too that I created to do Amazon or e-commerce, I should say, advocacy. But a lot of it's focused around Amazon since they're sort of the big dog in the room. And it's just about knowing kind of where the Achilles heel is, right? And so
Yeah.
with big companies like Amazon, when you're under antitrust scrutiny, that's a great opportunity for us as sellers and to basically kind of, you want to restore the balance of power between, the individual seller and Amazon. Leveraging government is a way to do that. So we, basically through this nonprofit that I created called the Online Merchants Guild, which is sort of a trade association for Amazon sellers. This is something I do with my volunteer time when I have it. We just basically we took all the kind of the stories we had heard over the years from our clients and members and basically compiled it
Mm.
into a submission, which you can go and read if you go to the subcommittee website. You can read Online Merchants Guild submission. And they really liked what we had to say. They really appreciated the candid detail, and then so they cited it quite a lot. And then when they were even passing antitrust legislation, they were trying to pass this antitrust legislation a couple of years ago. They were even reading our emails. It was weird. I was watching TV and I'm seeing Congresswoman Jayapal reading our emails on TV. It's crazy.
Wow.
So it's it's part of what I do though. It's just kind of how we have always gone about dealing with Amazon and dealing with e-commerce. Just it's this new body of law, and so you've got a lot of confusion. You've got one power player that's kind of in a position to take advantage, and we've just kind of taken this opportunity to sort of try to bring the balance of power back a little bit, and
Yeah.
show people the way to do that because there is a way.
I was going to say,
Uh,
has it worked? I mean, how do you? Because
Absolutely,
it's always been. I've always sort of Amazon. The analogy is always for me has been David and Goliath, right? I mean, you've got this
yeah. It's a
monster of a thing. So, what sort of things have you done that's brought the power back? I'm kind of curious about that.
well, we could do so much more. So in a way, like the answer is I'm still like disappointed that we haven't figured out a way to like come together as an e-commerce community in a single form and fashion, really just own the space.
Yeah.
We were kind of going down that road, but no, I mean we leverage government to get the balance of power. I mean, we look at Amazon. I don't look at it as David and Goliath. I always look at it as more of like it's sort of a combination of like um, it's like the Achilles analogy. Like you've just got to know where it hurts. And
Yeah.
big companies, big matrix organizations like Amazon, they're not, they don't run in secret. Everything is out in the open. You know what their pain points are. You know where they don't want Congress calling them every day, members of Congress saying, what did you do to my constituents? So what we've done a lot of times, like what I've done with like in my suspension practice, for my clients who get their account shut down, in many cases, what I would do is I would call their Congress people up if I couldn't get through. Like it was a good case, and we've tried everything. We've tried every possible mode of appeal, and we're not getting anywhere because the
Mm.
system is just stupid. Which it is, right? The appeal system is sometimes it's just chaotic. It's like you're talking
Yeah.
to a brick wall, or actually worse, because at least brick walls just don't say anything. These things regurgitate. It's like we've been able to sort of say, hey, look, Congressman so and so, I'm representing your constituent who is building a multi-million dollar business, hiring X number of people, and everything was going great until they suddenly got shut down by Amazon, right? And we've tried to explain to Amazon what the problem is and why it should be fixed, but we just can't get through to reasonable people. Perhaps you can. Now, when Amazon gets a call from Congress or congressional staff, that's a whole different, it goes to a whole different department, right?
Right.
And you do that enough times, and you start to develop a relationship with Amazon on your own. That's kind of like, okay, maybe they just rather hear from us because they're tired of hearing from Congress. Other things we've done, like the 72-hour suspension rule, I know it's not a huge win, but one of the things I wanted to do during antitrust scrutiny was I wanted to push for legislation that would have been a seller bill of rights. But again, we just don't have that unity of the seller community to really build that. But the reason I want to do this is because we actually did something like that in California. When we lobbied to change the tax law, like I don't know if you remember, but like Amazon years ago, they told you it was your responsibility to do all the sales taxes in the U.S., which is basically like your VAT transaction tax. We changed that. I mean, we actually don't think it was ever anyone's responsibility but Amazon's, but just to remove the doubt, we went and lobbied to change those laws. And then through that, we actually changed the laws in California to mirror some laws that Europe had been basically working on to protect sellers and provide sellers with reasons for why their account was shut down. And that led to the 72-hour suspension notice. So yeah, I mean, we cracked through now and again. I mean, we have our ways, and there's always a way, and we'll fight. I mean, it's there's no limit on our imagination in terms of how we'll get through somehow. And I think that's what we've done differently. Is we just think there's a right way to go about these things. You certainly don't want to be like bribing people or doing anything shady, but there is a way to get known and build influence within Amazon. You just have to know how to play that game. And I think I have the benefit of growing up in that corporate environment where that's what we do. It was a part of my job. It wasn't the biggest part of my job, but it was a part of it.
Yeah. That sounds really good. It sounds interesting, taking these sort of big things on. For those that don't know, listening to the show, explain what the 72-hour suspension rule was. Or is. So
it was basically, there'd be back in the day, if you were selling on Amazon, one day you go to sleep at night, everything's going great. Next morning you wake up, your whole account is shut down. You're locked out of your account. You don't know what the hell happened. All right? Mm-hmm. Nothing. Well, now Amazon has to, except for, I guess, extreme circumstances, they have to give you a 72-hour warning. And what it's actually led to, too, is less suspension of accounts and now more suspension of ASINs. So in some ways, what it's done is it's just changed the nature of the suspension. So now we see more product level suspensions as opposed to full on account suspensions. But in a way, that's good because it's hard to appeal when you're locked out of your account because Amazon has you on a fraud block. For what? And it's for now and today, that same issue would be just a mere check the box type of appeal. But I mean, the system was kind of brutal back then. So it's made the system a little bit better for appeals, I think. But we still got a ways to go. It's still a mess, but that's why we have a whole business around Amazon account health and suspension, which I don't love, but I mean, we have to do it.
Somebody has to, don't they?
And a lot of people do, but we built one that's sort of legal driven. It's got a little bit of a legal thing because we feel like a lot of these account suspensions do have a lot of times have legal implications, and so you need that. But I mean, I can't wait for somebody to put me out of business on that one. I don't love that industry. It's not my favorite part of what we do. It's important that we do it, but it's not my favorite thing. No. I'm happy to tell you what my favorite thing is, so I don't sound like a hypocrite too. So I'm happy to tell you what I do love, but that is not one of them. Exits. I love as a law firm. So we have Seller Basics as our account health plan, sellerbasics.com, but then we also have my law firm, which is just a regular law firm, and one of the many law firms that supports Seller Basics members. But through my law firm, we provide legal services, and I love exits. We did, we had a big bubble in valuation for Amazon sellers in 2020 and 2021. We did about $250 million in exits for our clients just in 2021 alone. Wow. We're probably approaching $500 million overall in total tally in terms of dollars. I'm only counting the dollars in pocket. I'm not counting the imaginary money that was never going to be because we knew that from the start. These earnouts, unrealistic earnouts, and things like that. But we've done a great job, and that's my favorite thing to do because one, it's like the only time it's really when your client's the happiest too, right? Like your clients can pay a lot of money, so they're usually very happy. It's the easiest time to build. It's the easiest time to build them.
It's the easiest time to get your money out of them. Yeah.
It's finally, there's some truth to that. I mean, I'm being facetious, but it's it is last thing you want to do is this awful thing happens to me. Like, yeah, well, now you have to pay us thousands of dollars to help fix it.
Yeah.
Like, that's never fun. That's not a fun thing to tell somebody, but it's like, it's our job. I mean, we have to do it. It's our, we all have to make a living, right? Nobody gives their product away for free. It's our service, but it definitely is more fun to say the reason you're paying me is so that I can help you safely extract millions and millions of dollars from your business. Like, that's a much more fun way to
sounds
to work
much more
with people.
exciting.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so you've obviously been involved then in a lot of these sort of exits, Paul. And I'm kind of curious, based on your experience, what are some of the common things that people sort of fall foul of when they're sort of exiting their business that you as a lawyer kind of go, man, you should have sorted it. Why this is something you could have sorted out easily ages ago, but it's now a bit of a mess.
Yeah, I mean, legal and compliance is always right. Like, it's just legal and compliance. Like, just getting somebody to look at your product and saying, people. I mean, I've had cases where people have found out midway through their due diligence that their product is FDA regulated. Like, they didn't know.
Right.
And that's sad, right? Because depending on what type of FDA regulation they come under, right? If they're class 1, class 2, like, it may take a year for them to get that certification that they need. And now you're out for the count, or, so it's like just taking inventory. Like, at some point, I mean, I get, like, as a lawyer, people still want to work with lawyers. They think we're expensive. They think, hourly rates are really high, and they just want to kind of, Google and Chat GPT probably have the answers, but they really don't have them yet. And yeah, maybe you got to this point in your life where, okay, you did your own trademark, good for you. But, if you're trying to build something you're trying to build real enterprise value, right? Something you can sell and create generational wealth for yourself. I mean, start doing the due diligence early. Do it long before you sell. Take inventory. Even simple things like pictures. You'd be surprised how many people screw up their pictures. I mean, it is bad, right?
What do you mean by screw up?
Like, they just can't prove title. So one of the things you have to promise. So when you sign a contract to sell your business, you make promises about the condition of your business. You make these warranties, right? So you're like, I promise I own all the intellectual property I use in my business. Well, do you? I mean, sometimes the pictures, like, you're like, well, who made the picture? Somebody I hired on Fiverr. Oh, where did they get that? Where did they get all those background stock images? I don't know. Right. And that image is on your packaging? Yeah. Okay. Right. So you can see how, like, just images alone can be a pain. Now, images, in my opinion, the good news about images, as long as it's not on your packaging, if it's like your listing photos, I mean, the downside is limited. You could say, fine. All right. I really screwed up my images. I'm sorry, Mr. Buyer. Here's $10,000. Go take all new photos, or whatever it costs to make new photos. I don't know. But, go do that, right? Here's a concession, right? So that way you don't have to take the risk of copyright infringement. You can get new photos. You can be happy. That's an easy one. But other things like trademarks, people understand, like, people get one trademark. Most Amazon sellers have one registered trademark, and that's oftentimes incorrect. Yes, you need one registered trademark to turn your brand registry on. But, like, if you have variations of products and you give them cute little names, those cute little names represent trademark, right? You're establishing trademark, right, under the common law, and you need to register that trademark. You need to know it's valid because your buyer is going to assume that it is valid, that name will, right, that some companies can come around and say, hey, you're infringing on our, right, like, you can't call your chocolate flavored lipstick Count Chocula because we have a cereal called Count Chocula. You know what I mean? Like, just because it's not your main trademark, it's still a sub. I mean, those sort of second tier trademarks are still important. People don't even look at them, and just the basics of stuff like that. And then, just the compliance, like I said, FDA, Consumer Product Safety, California's Proposition 65. I mean, there's all these, you have to promise to your buyer that you're complying with the law, right? So if you don't know, or it turns out you're not, I mean, that can affect your deal. And it could affect it big time. Same with, like, engaging in review manipulation, although we surprisingly have gotten through a lot of buyers just, don't seem to care about that. There was a time when there was a little bit of paranoia, but doesn't mean you should do it, though. But, it raises issues, what ends up happening is you end up taking all the risks so if there is substantial like review manipulation or breach of Amazon's terms of service type issues, like what ends up oftentimes what the buyer will want is they'll want some sort of like term that says like they can basically go after your house and your firstborn kid if anything ever becomes of it, right? Like if it turns into something, like we'll accept the risk now and we'll pay you, but if this whole thing blows up because of that, then we want the right to not only get our money back, but go after you personally and go after your house. You know, it's like a whole thing. So we don't recommend, straying too far from the Amazon terms of service or actually straying at all. So, but it's interesting, this process of going through the exit. It's people are surprised. They don't really know what it is we do as lawyers and how it varies from brokers. And that, I try to say like, we're kind of like your risk negotiator, right? We're helping you risk manage this deal because, a lot of buyers, when they come into buying a company, especially an aggregator, private equity backed aggregator, they really want you to give them a sure thing. Like the contracts are really written by default to say basically like you're giving us a sure thing, and if anything goes wrong, we're going to go after your house and your kids. And, it's like I'm kidding about but it's just that is the language. Like we want to go after you personally, and it's scary.
Yeah, well, it is. I mean, I sold an e-com business, not an Amazon business, but an e-com business 2 years ago, and it was a fairly innocuous deal. But the contracts, I mean, I was very grateful that a really good friend of mine just happens to be a contracts barrister, so here in the UK, and he was asking me all kinds of questions like you've talked about, like, well, Matt, this image on your website, who owns that? I'm like, what are you talking about? Who owns that? And it was stuff like you've talked about that I'd never thought of that actually became an issue when I wanted to sell the business, because I had to warrant, I had to make certain warranties about what they were buying, and to do that was quite tricky. And I was selling the business to somebody in the same space, to one of our competitors in the same space. And so he knew the industry, he knew a lot of what we were doing. But even so, the contract negotiations were a lot more complex than I thought they were going to be. And they were a lot more protracted than I thought they were going to be. But I'm very grateful I'm not just saying this because you're a lawyer on the phone, but I was very, very grateful to have a very good lawyer to help me understand what was actually being put in this contract. I mean, you took a step back.
You're definitely not saying because I'm here, because he's a good lawyer, but yeah.
Yeah, but do you know what I mean?
So kudos to that guy.
Kudos to that guy. Yeah. But it's one of those when I took a step back and I looked at it, it made sense why the guy buying the business wanted me to sign the contract that he did, because he wanted as much surety about what he was buying as he could possibly get.
Of course.
And so it was just really fascinating that whole contract going backwards and forwards.
It is. It really surprises people. Like my favorite is like, come on, isn't it just boilerplate? Can't you just do it for like $500 and like it's just boilerplate, right? And you're like, I'm like, next time you get on a plane, right, and you walk on a plane, I want you to look to your left when you walk in the front door, and you see the cockpit there and all the switches and buttons. I'm like, is that boilerplate? Probably. Can you fly the fucking plane though? No. So, pardon my language. Sorry. You see what I'm saying? Like those contracts are. I like the cockpit analogy because one, I'm an aviation dork, and I can actually, like, my neighbors when I worked at Microsoft were the flight simulator guys, and actually taught me how to do the Cat 3 ILS auto land, which is really cool. So I feel like I could land the plane if both pilots actually had the fish and it was a problem. I feel like I could do it if the plane was otherwise fully functional. But the other reason I like the strategy is the scenario is because if you look at the complexity of a typical airplane cockpit with all those like little switches, right? Those tiny little switches all over the place, just floor to ceiling switches, right? That's kind of like what a purchase agreement is. It's like every word, every comma in a way is like a switch, right? And it's not that this is something profound and like that this purchase agreement is so different than any other one. That's why you need a lawyer. It's that you need a lawyer to sort of be the interpreter and say, okay, well, here's the risk profile that buyer wants. Here's the risk profile you want. In order to get that risk profile, we need to do this, and this, and this, use, define knowledge as your actual knowledge, not your constructive knowledge, and then disclose this on that, apply this indemnity cap, so like you're building this configuration, if you will, within this, 30 to 75 page document, depending on, what you're working with. When you're building that configuration, you're configuring it for a specific purpose and a certain risk profile. So that's why I like and one flip of one switch can just undo the entire thing, right? One missing comma, one, knowledge qualifier that you should have had, how you define the word fraud, can just completely change the entire risk profile of the deal. As one switch on a cockpit could probably very much change the trajectory of your flight path. So,
yeah.
I don't know. Maybe that's not a great analogy. I like it, but I still stand by. I think it's a pretty decent analogy.
That works. I get it. Having flown planes myself, I get it. It's I'm the guy that maybe I think I could probably try and land the plane, but I think I'd probably still spend the first 30 minutes trying to save the life of the pilots.
I got
back
this.
Up full speed.
Especially if it's an Airbus or Boeing. Like, I got this. It's fine.
No problem.
You got it.
No problem.
They got the computer, the FMCs. It's all programmed. I'm fine. I'm good. I'm not hand flying this thing. I'm just pushing the little buttons to make the computer do it. Yeah.
So if you're, I'm fascinated talking to you, Paul, because again, it's just reminding me of that whole journey that I went through in selling our business. We were pretty well established, 12 years old. We've been doing it a while. I've been around the block a few times. I've got a few gray hairs on the chin, sort of thing. But I'm aware that, people listening to the show are going to be at different stages of their e-commerce journey. So if people are just starting out in e-commerce and they're listening to you talk about lawyers and trademarks and all that sort of thing, is this something that you think you would say, if you're starting to think about this from the start, or is this should I just get up and running first? I'm just kind of curious, what advice would you give to a startup?
So I'm a big believer in sort of, this is why I created the Seller Basics program that I created, because it's sort of for this very point. It's like, I'm a big believer in a couple things. One, we do kind of invest in our clients, right? Like, we understand that like let's take a subject like asset protection, right? You can have a limited liability company in America, and that may protect your assets. It'll give you some protection, right? Mm-hmm. There's always ways to make it better. You can also do a full-on trust and estates, blowout, right, with multiple entities and offshore entities, and go, So the question is, like, what's appropriate, right? If you're just starting out on Amazon, or e-commerce, maybe you're doing some arbitrage, you're not even selling your own product, you're just reselling, stuff you buy at the Nike store.
Yeah.
Your need for that, for that big done up structure is probably minimal. But let's say you're selling hoverboards and you're worth 10 million, right? Then you might need that, right? Yeah. Then you may need that structure. So I'm a big believer in like what's appropriate for the person at the time, and we can always go back to visit. So like I've gone to Amazon, meetups. The New York Amazon meetup is fantastic. It's run by my friend Brandon Furman. It's one of the best for a free meetup. It's phenomenal. The quality of speakers they get just to show up for a free meetup, it's really great. It's run at Pioneer's office, and the reason I bring that up is because it's always an interesting mix of people. You get some really heavy hitters in the New York area who show up, some medium-sized Amazon sellers as well, and then you get some noobs who just have no idea what they're doing. And they oftentimes, when they hear I'm a lawyer, will come up to me and say like, do I need to set up an LLC? And I'll be like, well, not necessarily. Like, maybe not. Maybe you need to figure out if this is what you want to do first. Maybe you need to sell a few things, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you're going straight into brand creation, trademark, and you already have a product in mind, then yeah, you probably do want to set up an LLC. But like, if you're just like, hey, I think I want to sell on the internet, what's that like? Maybe try reselling a few things that you buy at TJ Maxx. For that, you don't even need an LLC to get started. But make a note, if you hit 6 figures, go back and talk to me about an LLC. And the reason I mention this is because our program is kind of designed. We created this thing called Seller Basics, right? And it's $100 a month. And I'm not trying to promote it, but it kind of just fits the spirit of what you're saying. It's like Seller Basics is a way you pay $100 a month, and you can actually speak to lawyers like me or other lawyers who are trained in e-com, who know your business, and you can ask them questions and you can get answers rather than wasting your time getting the wrong answer from Google. You can go straight to the lawyer, get those answers. And we did that for a reason, because when I first started out in private practice, which was totally an accident, like my whole law practice was based on a blog post that I wrote and went kind of viral-ish and didn't intend to. It was about taxes and sales tax. But, um, my whole point of view is like um, when a lot of my clients get in trouble, a lot of times it's in that early stage when they were just starting out, there's something they missed. They forgot to dot an I across the T. And it's one of those I's or T's that if I had known that person and was able to go back in time and meet that person, have a 15-minute conversation with them, we could have prevented the whole thing. It's like this commercial in America, the Geico commercial, where you say, 15 minutes could save you 15, can save you hundreds on your insurance. It's sort of like 15 minutes with a lawyer can sometimes save your entire business. So that's why we create the program, is partially because not just to protect your account health with Amazon and your e-commerce providers, but so that I actually like the program because it encourages you in a sort of safe way where you're not going to get a surprise bill because there is no billing, right? You can ask that question now. You can say, hey, I'm starting a business. I want to sell bicycle helmets on Amazon. Anything I need to know, right? You can ask that question and get some good feedback and get some good answers. Or I want to file a trademark. What do I need to know? And I love that. I'm a big believer in investing in my clients. And what I mean by that is we don't want to be the most expensive one on the block, especially for the startups, right? We want to be a little bit easy because we're in it. Some of my biggest clients who sold their business in 2021, for tens of millions of dollars, they were clients of mine when they weren't even doing $1 million, 3-4 years prior, and it was my availability, my going easy on them, that led them to coming to me when they were ready to sell. It's like, okay, now I'm ready to sell my business for 10 million. Okay. So there's sort of I call that the sort of investment we make in our new clients. We want people to build successful businesses. We hate the idea of them just kind of, missing out on something and having that totally derail the enterprise value they're trying to create. And so that's why we built this program that we built, to encourage people to get that kind of help and to make it easy on the front end.
Wow. So that sounds all great. The ability just to call up and just chat to somebody and ask a question is always super helpful. Unless, and I mean this with all due respect, unless you're from some of the younger generations and they don't really know what the phone is, but maybe they can text in.
It's definitely going to be a phone call, but they can go on their portal. You schedule the call, and we do it usually a lot of times via Zoom because we started getting a lot of people from different parts of the world, and it's hard to dial Kazakhstan for some reason, and so
I can imagine.
It's just so we're switching to Zoom, but we're very popular in Romania. I think I should be Romanian Lawyer of the Year. I really do. Yeah. I should be Bucharest Lawyer of the Year. They came out of Romanian exits. Something's going on in Romania. There's something in the water there.
Something's great.
Crazy.
Something's great.
There's a lot of brand activity there.
You've obviously seen and worked with a lot of clients and get them through the gate. So do you predominantly work with the seller, or do you work with the buyer, or do you work with both?
It's a good question. So when it came to these big private equity-backed aggregators, we worked with one of the big ones very early on. And it was at that moment I decided I never want to work with another one again. And it's not because I had anything negative about them. I actually like them quite a lot. I'm still very close to them. But I just think from our perspective, when you're that funded, and oftentimes they do, like you can hire any law firm you want. They can hire some of the biggest law firms in the country. That's what they want to do. And they have. I have literally been in deals, and I've been in deals where, the other law firm is like the same law firm I work with at Microsoft. I'm like, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
I'm like, your legal bill is more than this deal.
Yeah.
Right. When you have 38 lawyers on every phone call, your bill is going to be more than the seller's going to get. But it's about the buyer wanting to be protected and feeling protected and using a name brand law firm and paying for that. And so I get that. So there's that perspective. But from my perspective, I don't actually like being I think we're a seller advocacy law firm. We really are advocates for the e-commerce community. And it's provable. We've won court cases on behalf of e-commerce as a class, right? We've won. We spoke to the antitrust subcommittee. I mean, we take action. And so I don't like the idea of being sort of like the bad guy to a small seller. I don't particularly love that position, especially when So like what I like to say is like we don't support big aggro. We don't represent big aggro as in big aggregator. Um, but at the same time, if my client is just a regular person who's looking to buy a business, I will represent them on the buy side. That's not a problem.
Right.
But I just don't. I don't feel like the big aggregators need me as much as I feel like the seller community. There's not a lot of competent e-commerce lawyers out there. I mean, there's
Yeah.
just not, and it's not any negative. It's just, I mean, the idea that e-commerce is its own body of law is still, I think, a foreign concept to many lawyers who don't live in this world, like who aren't from this world. It's just business law. Like, no, it's very different. E-commerce law. It's very different. Opening up a tea shop in the middle of on High Street in any town USA or any town UK is very different than starting a small business out of your kitchen table that reaches the entire country or halfway across the globe, and you're importing from another country. Like, do you see what I mean? Like
Yeah.
e-commerce created what I call the global small business. Right? This is a concept and that's who we serve. We serve the global small business, and I always say that phrase global small business it's an oxymoron, right? Like if you were prior to e-commerce, right, in the 1980s, I have a global small business. What the heck does that even mean? How is that even possible?
Yeah.
But with FBA, especially giving you the power of Amazon's logistics, and now with all the various different logistics companies and 3PLs out there that you can use, whether it's with Amazon or Shopify, the global small business is a real thing. And so
Yeah.
part of what attracted me to being in this body of law is the fact that I had multinational commerce experience as a lawyer. And for the first time in the history of the world, somebody who's not a $1 billion company needed my help. In fact, somebody who was not even $1 million company needed my help. To me, that was profoundly fascinating, and I wanted to see what that was all about. And so that's kind of what motivated me to check it out.
Fantastic. So you've obviously seen a lot of companies sold for a lot of money. What are some of the common traits? I guess I'm just trying to. If someone's listening to the show who's thinking of getting involved in e-commerce to build a business to sell it, obviously you've talked about getting the regulations right and making sure your T's are crossed and I's are dotted. But what sort of things sell well in your experience? What sort of things should I be thinking about from maybe an industry or a niche or a country? I'm just curious to learn from that side of things.
And that's the weird thing, is that there wasn't much to it, right? I mean, it was really about what made the product valuable, especially in the Amazon space, because most of the Amazon aggregators were focused on Amazon dominant companies. Like they wanted 70+% Amazon because they didn't really know if their formula would work with Shopify.
Sure.
It was almost like the listing proved itself. So if you ran the sales kind of proved what was desirable, is not so much the product. That being said, there were certain product categories that were a little scarier than others, such as anything toys, kids, right? Baby products, a little bit scarier, right? Mm-hmm. Supplements, oddly, a lot of companies were afraid of supplements. I think now a lot of companies are starting to warm up to supplements. But getting into supplements, tough business to get into at this point. Right? I mean, people do it all the time, but it's so flipping competitive, right? I mean, it's in some categories, I've heard you've had to spend millions in PPC. Pet products, I think good ingenuitive products where you can take the lead, where your target market isn't, children and babies, always better, not too dangerous, not the kind of thing that's going to, but really, I mean, the world's, I mean, there's no one specific category, that's to avoid versus the other, outside of like I said, a lot of people who sell products in the guns space have a harder time, not even if it's not guns, but like gun accessories. There's a lot of buyers have clauses that say they can't buy what we call them 2A companies, Second Amendment, as in the Constitution, Second Amendment, Bill of Rights, the famous carrying gun law.
Yeah.
So a lot of buyers apparently have like these clauses that say that they can't, a lot of lenders, have these clauses that say that their, borrowers can't use the money to buy products that are into sort of the gun space, if you will. So there's like weird restrictions like that.
Yeah.
Stay away from things that are controversial, things that make kind of questionable claims, like if they're like, you're selling like, magic beads or something like that, but if you can make headway just kind of selling relatively routine stuff, or just kind of a cool take on a product that's relatively benign, I think it's hard to say that there's any one category or specific categories that are better than others, and things trend differently. Like, for example, last example I'll give on this point, kitchen products always usually do really well. Like, if you can make it in kitchen, it's a popular category. People are always looking for quirky little on the latest avocado peeler, right? They're always looking for something. It was interesting to see, like, and so in 2020, we had this huge COVID bubble. Like, a lot of people, if you were in anything outdoorsy, anything like kitchen, home goods type stuff, you were doing great because people were stuck at home. They were looking for things to do. You could only do outdoorsy stuff. Obviously, if you were in travel, that was a bad time. So they had this huge bump. We call it the COVID bump, right? And then come 2021, the market was still on fire in 2021 in terms of like Amazon sellers. But there was sort of a bubble bursting that happened in about April of 2021 if you were in home goods. Because all of a sudden you had, people were, COVID restrictions were relaxed in 21. People were suddenly allowed to go outside again to travel. And what you saw was like just a steep decline in interest in anything kitchen. So all of a sudden having like a kitchen product in 2021 was like a curse. It was like, forget about it, so sometimes things trend funny, but I would always say stick with stuff that's less regulated, like, things that, stay away from foods and perishables, stay away from clothing, unless that's your passion. But, clothing's always tough because you've got returns, you've got sizes. So it's always a harder product category to get into unless that's your passion. But yeah, it's kind of, a lot of these buyers and private equity, especially, they don't really care what you're selling. You're proving it via your sales. Your sales kind of make it speak for itself. The one thing I tell people, with patents and things like that, I've had people say to me, well, I've got this patent and that's going to be great once I launch this product under this patent. It's like, do realize that you won't get any value out of that. If the only way to get value out of a patented product in a sort of a private equity deal is to show that it actually makes money, right? Like, nobody's going to pay you on the speculative future earnings. You've got to prove, hey, this company, I'm consistently selling this product and making $1 million a year. This product's covered by this patent. And then you have the ability to not only sell it at a multiple of $1 million, but a higher multiple because there's a patent. So that's sort of how the patent. But if you haven't proven that patent, then it may not do anything for you. Like, you're not
worth
likely to get much.
Yeah.
It's probably not going to be worth much, in terms of your deal. Maybe in the next, maybe when the buyer takes it over, they might get something out of it if they prove it's worth something. But just kind of keep that in mind when you're considering timing of patents are great, but execution is so much more important too.
No, super, super helpful. What's been the most surprising thing you've seen sell well as a company?
Well, I think it was just, what was surprising was the lack of, during sort of the bubble of it all, right? When deals would close in fast, 30 days time, was just, go back to my point of the avocado peeler. It's like, it seemed odd that some of these buyers were spending like 5, 6, top multiples for like the most generic, like the Alibaba specials where you just literally wipe the label off, but you're not, it just didn't matter. And it was like the lack of due diligence that blew my mind. Like, they were so eager to spend the money that was committed to them by their lenders or investors that they would just literally bypass the diligence, and they would basically just want you to go back to the contract, like we were talking about earlier, where you're making all these warranties about your company. They were basically saying, hey, we're just going to rely on your warranties. We're not going to actually do the due diligence and investigate. So I would see things sell that were like, totally in violation of the law, and we would disclose it. We're like, this is not compliant with like these laws, and it just didn't matter. Like, they didn't care. Like, they were so. And so it was surprised me, just like, and that's kind of where I was clued into this feels like a bubble, because it's just like, if they're that stupid with their money and the investors are that stupid with their money to let them do that, that feels like a bubble to me, So, and then we saw a lot of aggregators fail and for a number of reasons. Some of it, I think, being the quality of the assets that they bought came back to haunt them. In other cases, we think they underestimated the value of the seller's contribution to the sales process, and thinking they could do it better than everybody else. But so I think it's always just those cases where it was like, if I was the buyer in any given scenario, knowing what I know, I'd run as far away as I could from this product. And like, no, it's still going to sell for millions and millions of dollars. You're like, it only blows up 10% of the time. It's only dismembered 20 people.
Wow. And people would buy it. It's funny, isn't it? Because the people do get in these buying frenzies every now and again, don't they? And then then it becomes a bit more sensible again after a little while. Until the next time.
Exactly. And it has. The market's definitely cool. The multiples have come down. And it's not just the multiples have come down, it's transaction complexity has gone up. So we're seeing more and more deals that could take 30 days to close and now taking sometimes 6, 7, 8 months to close. Yeah. Going back and forth on terms forever. They're arguing over terms. The lawyers, like the cost of transactional costs have definitely gone up. Like, I mean, in some ways, like the volume of transactions that we did in 2021 was nuts. The volume we're doing now is much lower, but the transaction cost is much higher because the buyers are not just doing this fly-by-night buying anymore. They're getting real lawyers and they're actually doing due diligence, insisting on it. And so it's a much different transaction today than it was a couple of years ago.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Paul, listen, I'm fascinated by the conversation. If people want to reach out, if they want to connect, if they want to find out more about Seller Basics, what's the best way to do that?
Sure. So they should go to sellerbasics.com and sign up. It's $100 a month. There's no contract. It's a ridiculously cheap way to have access to legal, and anything goes wrong with your account, we are there to help you try to get it back online. We'll go to war for you. If you just want to email me and say hi, my law firm email address is paul@ecom.law. That's paul@ecom.law. You can email me and say hi and say how much you really enjoyed seeing me on this podcast. Or you can tell me how much you hated having me on this podcast, and I should never be on one.
Either way, just start the conversation.
Yeah, just to get going. I mean, I prefer. My mom always said, if you want anything nice to say, don't say it all. So I appreciate that. If you
yeah.
I am also very sensitive, and
it's a good rule of life. Yeah.
But I mean, if you feel like you have to, this is something you need to get out of your system, I respect that too. So
no, fair play. Fair play.
That's how you can do
that.
So
is Seller Basics predominantly for Amazon sellers, or is it e-com businesses as well?
I think it's for both. I think that there's a definite benefit that Amazon sellers get because we're so good at the account suspension stuff with Amazon, and that's not really a thing that happens on, Shopify. I'd say Shopify, you know what I mean, website selling, right?
Yeah.
We're so good with the marketplaces like Amazon and Walmart that it's certainly a benefit, but it's so cheap at $100 a month to have access to legal. When you're a member too, not only is our legal services are cheaper and they're oftentimes flat rated, like filing a trademark, things like that, are substantially cheaper when you're a member. So I think it's for both. I mean, I think no matter what you're selling, I've had cases. I mean, I had a case once where a guy was selling shower heads on a Shopify site and got fined by California for 6 figures because the shower heads they were selling were good for 49 states, but not California. So I mean, I don't see why this wouldn't be a good program for anyone in the e-commerce space.
Yeah.
It's a great way to just kind of get a relationship with a lawyer. Mm-hmm. And because it's $100 a month, like you're controlling the call, like we don't do surprise billing. We're not going to get a surprise bill in the mail. Like we don't do that. We always say
are you for US clients or US law?
We're predominantly U.S. law. We can dabble a little bit in other countries depending on what we do, but predominantly U.S. law. Meaning, but because most of our clients are selling in the U.S., even if they're UK based or Europe based or Romania based, because the U.S. usually represents their biggest market, we do have clients from all over the world. But we may have, but look, I have a network of lawyers. Like I have lawyers in the UK that I'm very good friends with. I have lawyers who do this stuff. I have lawyers in Australia who do this stuff. So I mean, if a client comes to me and they're a member and they have this really quirky question, more likely than not, I'll be able to go out and source that answer for them, or source some semblance, some guidance on that and where they want to go from there. So we try to serve as much as we can, our clients as much as we can. So we'll
Fantastic.
do our very best to support all clients from all marketplaces or e-commerce platforms and from all countries.
Fantastic. Well, that's great. So sellerbasics.com. We will, of course, link to that in the show notes as well. Paul, listen, been great. There you go. Show the business card. It's been great. It's been great chatting to you. I've enjoyed the conversation, and I've enjoyed the fact you've actually brought humor to something which could have been quite dry. So great to join you today, and thanks for your advice and input. And it's been an absolute pleasure, my friend.
It's been an absolute blast, man. Anytime you need me to come back and drop some knowledge, I think. Just so cheesy. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm always happy to. I'm always happy to do that. So
always happy to do
so
the
much.
cheesy. Yeah.
Yeah, it ain't easy being cheesy. Right?
It ain't easy being cheesy. That's a good t-shirt slogan, isn't it?
Exactly.
That's brilliant. Paul, thank you so much, man. And also, big shout out to today's show sponsor, eCommerce Cohort. Do check out the free training that I mentioned at ecommercecycles.com. Also, be sure to follow eCommerce Podcast wherever you get your podcasts from, because we've got yet more great conversations lined up. And I don't want you to miss any of them. And in case no one has told you yet today, dear listener, let me be the first person to tell you, you are awesome, created awesome. It's just a burden you have to bear. Paul has to bear it. I have to bear it.
Every day.
Every day. We've just got to bear this problem, but it is what it is. So the e-commerce podcast is produced by Orion Media. You can find our entire archive of episodes on your favorite podcast app. The team that makes this show possible is Sadaf Bainon, Tanya Hutzelek, and a whole bunch of other people in the team. We've got the music by Josh Edmondson. As I mentioned, if you'd like the show notes or transcript, head over to the website ecommercepodcast.net and you'll find everything there. So that's it from me. That's it from Paul. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a fantastic week wherever you are in the world. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.